Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome back to the Breaking News. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Starting off with our breaking news today, we heard that the captain of a Kilo-class submarine called the Krasnodar was shot to death or assassinated in the streets of Krasnodar today. Apparently, we're not exactly sure what the motives were behind the assassination, but Captain Stanislav Rizhitsky was shot dead in Krasnodar with 4 shots to the back and to the chest. He was the commander of Russia's Navy's Krasnodar submarine, which we have a picture of right here, a Kilo-class diesel-electric submarine operating out of the Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol. But not only that, he was the deputy head of the city department for mobilization work in the city of Krasnodar. We don't really know what the motives are, but one can make a couple of assumptions. It may have been an assassination attempt to kill an important captain of a Russian submarine. It may also have been an assassination attempt because he was the head of the city department for mobilization work. It may have been that someone in Krasnodar was conscripted that was a part of a local gang or a local mafia and caused a bit of a stir. He decided to conscript them nonetheless, and now we can see that he's paid the price for that. Of course, this is all hypothesis based around his positions that he held and possible motives because of that as to why someone would want to kill him. But at the moment, the exact reason that the assassination happened is unknown. All we know is that captain of the second rank Stanislav Rizhitsky is now dead in Krasnodar, and the Krasnodar submarine is left without a captain at this moment. An appointment of a captain for a Kilo-class submarine will most likely be happening fairly soon, probably within the week, so it won't be that massive of an impact to the Kilo-class submarine and its operations. It won't be knocked out of action entirely. It most likely will not be used, however, until there is a new captain, or they may hand over operations of the submarine in the meantime to the first officer who will become the acting captain of the Kilo-class submarine. Not only has that been important news, but in the naval sphere of the war, and the naval sphere of the world, apparently Russian spies have been being arrested in mass inside of Poland as they have been trying to conduct surveillance operations on NATO forces and NATO naval assets in the Polish coastal area. According to the Polish, they have been able to arrest the 15th spy in this particular spy network that has been attempting to try and assess what kind of resources NATO has in the area. According to Visegrad 24, Polish Internal Security, the ABW, arrested another Russian spy today. The man was surveilling Polish military objects and critical infrastructure along the coastline, passing on the info to Moscow. And of course, he is the 15th spy that was arrested from this Russian spy network. It appears that the Russians are trying their best to assess what NATO may be capable of in the area at this time, as they are probably trying to get a threat assessment made on NATO to see if it's that serious of a concern, and if they need to start dialing things back in the Ukraine so that way they can focus on other things like Baltic border security or even Finnish border security now that Finland is a part of NATO. And NATO is also starting to ramp up the stakes a little bit. For the first time in over 30 years at this point, NATO has actually made a response plan to a Russian aggression situation in the Eastern European area. According to Phytux News, and this was also collaborated on by Reuters, which both put out the same story, NATO allies have reached an agreement on regional plans detailing how the alliance will respond to a Russian attack. 3 diplomats told Reuters. This is the first time NATO has drawn up such plans since the end of the Cold War. These plans appear to be somewhat on the logistical side of things more than the strategic side of things, and it appears that it would be attempting to make sure that the Baltics is a fortress if the Suwalki Gap was to be closed, and to also ensure that in countries like Poland, arms manufacturing becomes a priority, as Poland would be the front line of the NATO alliance at this moment. And so it appears that the alliance is stretching, though this alliance's response plan is spanning over several years' time before it is fully implemented, but the NATO alliance did insist today that they are ready if anything is to happen at this moment. The alliance could respond immediately without delay, and the only thing that would really become an issue would be the logistical side of things, because most supply lines would be stretched pretty far. Most arms manufacturers are inside of the major NATO members, such as the United States, France, the UK, and Germany. And that does expand the supply lines by several thousand or just several hundred miles. The attempt in a war is to try and make the supply lines from the manufacturer to the front line as short as physically possible. That allows for the equipment to have no delay time in between when it is manufactured and when it is sent to the front lines. And especially in a place like the Baltics, where possible Russian naval interference could become a hindering factor to getting supplies to this area if for some reason the Russians pulled off a miracle and did close the Suwalki Gap in between Kaliningrad and Belarus, that could start to become a serious issue. And so we're trying to make sure that the Baltics can defend itself before NATO reinforcements were to arrive in that area, and we're also trying to make sure that once NATO reinforcements arrive, they would have something to work with. Speaking of NATO and their response plan in Eastern Europe, we've also heard that NATO has been moving more towards making Ukraine appear to be a NATO member. Of course, Ukraine isn't a NATO member at this point, and they won't be until after the war. That's at least the official statement that the NATO alliance is currently going with. But they are going to be allowing Zelensky to attend the next NATO summit. This is a fairly large deal, as members outside of, well, heads of state outside of NATO rarely, if ever, get to attend a NATO summit. But this is one of the first times ever, and we can see here that Stoltenberg made the announcement that Zelensky will attend the NATO summit. We don't really know what his role will be there. We do not know if he'll be giving a speech, giving an address to NATO. He most likely will. He may just be there to see the happenings at the NATO summit and maybe talk to leaders on the side. The exact details of that are unknown at the moment, but it is great to hear that Zelensky will be attending the NATO summit and will be able to continue to talk about Ukrainian national security as well as NATO security in regards to the current ongoing war in Ukraine. And to top all of this off, probably one of the most interesting things that we've heard is that Sweden is going to be joining NATO. Turkey has finally gotten rid of all of their the complaints against Sweden that were barring them from entering NATO, and they're now moving them out of the way. A statement was made a little bit earlier, and it's actually breaking news at this moment. It just broke 7 minutes ago while we were making this video, but breaking news has happened as Erdogan struck up a bargain with Europe. Many people know that Turkey has been a NATO member since the inception of NATO in the late 1940s, but Turkey has never been a part of the European Union, or an official part of the European Union for that matter, and it appears that Erdogan has tried to get the best of both worlds. Erdogan understands that Sweden is a strategically important asset in the Scandinavian area, but he also understands that Turkey has room to benefit from such an agreement, and I have to say, with how this has turned out, and the news that just came out 7 minutes ago, this was a master play by Erdogan to get Turkey into the European Union. Erdogan demanded that Turkey's admission to the European Union in exchange for Turkey's agreement to admit Sweden to NATO. And this is what Erdogan said. First, open the way for Turkey to join the EU, and then we will clear the way for Sweden's NATO bid, just as we did with Finland, the Turkish president said, which is Erdogan. Now, this is something that some people may scoff at, that he would put NATO's strategic concerns out of the way for Turkish concerns alone. But one has to remember that Erdogan is the president of Turkey, and therefore is looking out for Turkey's best interests at all given times. And while this appeared to be putting NATO's strategic interests to the side for a moment, one has to give him credit that this was a fairly good play on Turkey's end. To get themselves into the European Union and just stall Sweden's joining for just several months, that wasn't really that big of a deal because, of course, an armed conflict wasn't going to be breaking out over the next several months with Russia, so it could be put on hold. And he was able to cause enough tensions that, from what we understand now, because from a statement that was made by a negotiator, they said that Erdogan will no longer stand in the way of Sweden joining NATO. They're apparently going to be going through the admission process for Turkey to join the European Union. This has a lot of benefits for Turkey. It opens up their economy, and it opens up the travel of Turkish people throughout the rest of the European Union without having to go through any kind of border security or border checkpoints. It generally fosters more economic abilities for the Turks as a nation. And so a huge amount of credit has to be given to Erdogan, although this seemed to be a very rocky and very controversial thing for a while, that he played this quite well. Sweden will become a member of NATO now, and now Turkey will also become a part of the European Union, which will help the Turks to get an upper hand against other countries that are in Asia Minor or in the Middle East. And so they're doing an amazing job. And I think this is also a great thing as well, because while this is something that Erdogan is initiating to join the European Union, at the same time, this is starting to thwart something that the Chinese have been trying to do. The Chinese have been trying to grow a system called the Belt and Road Program, to summarize this shortly, where they end up having indomitable control over the Indian Ocean and all the countries that surround it. And the very end to the the Belt and Road project that the Chinese have, which is also called the New Silk Road, is Turkey. Turkey was going to be the last country in that group, and China has been trying to smooth itself over to Turkey and make itself seem to be the more viable option than Western economic alliances. So while Erdogan may have initiated this bargain to try and join the European Union, it is furthering the Chinese from their Belt and Road Program ambitions through the Middle East and through the Indian Ocean, because now the very end of that rope is now a fray, because Turkey is certainly not going to be moving towards the east. They're moving further west in their economic ambitions. And so this is an amazing thing. And absolutely great statesmanship by Erdogan, especially as far as the Turks are concerned, because he got the Turks the best deal that they could have ever gotten at this point. And so with that is all of the news for the day, and I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much for watching this once again. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It makes us really happy when folks do. And if you like these videos, support us on Patreon, because that helps these projects to be possible. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.